rain poured like a curtain over the city that evening, soft, cold, and endlessly melancholic. Inside the small corner coffee shop, the warm lights flickered against glass windows misted with condensation. The smell of roasted beans mingled with the hum of quiet chatter. It was the kind of night when people came seeking warmth, not just from coffee, but from company. And for Emma Clark, it was supposed to be just that. A simple blind date arranged by her best friend. A chance to forget the loneliness that had slowly wrapped itself around her heart over the past few years. She sat by the window, nervously twisting the hem of her sweater. The faint reflection in the glass showed a woman in her late 20s, tired eyes, soft curls tucked behind one ear, and that polite smile people wear when they don't expect much but still hope. She hadn't been on a date since her last breakup, and truthfully, she wasn't ready for another heartbreak. But her friend insisted. He's kind, humble, not one of those arrogant types. The doorbell chimed. Emma looked up. A tall man stepped in, shaking the rain off his coat. His clothes were plain, worn jeans, a simple gray shirt, and shoes that looked like they'd seen better days. Definitely not the kind of guy she'd expect her friend to set her up with. Yet there was something about him, something steady in the way he moved, like he didn't need to impress anyone. "Emma?" he asked, his voice calm, deep, and almost unsure. She smiled, though part of her heart sank. "Yes, you must be Noah?" He nodded, taking the seat across from her. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence was awkward, but not unbearable. His hands were rough, maybe from real work, not the kind done behind a desk. His eyes, hazel with flecks of gold, were kind, though they carried a quiet sadness. The kind you see in people who've lost something they can't talk about. As they began to talk, Emma found herself slowly lowering the wall she didn't realize she'd built. He asked her about her dreams, her family, her favorite books, questions no one had asked her in years. He listened, really listened, not like someone passing time, but like someone who genuinely cared about her answers. When she laughed, he smiled, not in admiration, but in quiet contentment. Still, something about him didn't add up. He was polite, educated, articulate, yet his phone was cracked, his watch was old, and the way he looked at the menu before ordering a simple black coffee made her think he was counting every dollar. Maybe her friend hadn't told her everything. Maybe he was struggling financially, but Emma didn't care. There was something rare about talking to someone who wasn't trying to sell you a version of themselves. As the evening went on, the storm outside grew louder. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating Noah's face. His expression changed for a second, somber, distracted, like he was carrying a secret he couldn't share. Emma leaned forward slightly. "You okay?" she asked softly. He blinked, snapping back to the moment. "Yeah," he said with a half smile, just thinking how unpredictable life can be. They shared a small laugh, but before she could ask what he meant, a loud crash echoed from outside. Screams followed. Through the window, they saw an older man stumble into the street as a car swerved dangerously close to him. Without hesitation, Noah jumped from his seat and sprinted outside. Emma froze, heart pounding, as he dashed into the rain, pulling the man out of harm's way just in time. The car skidded to a stop, its horn blaring. People rushed out of the cafe, but Noah was already helping the man to his feet, drenched and shaking. Emma watched through the window, his soaked clothes clinging to him, his expression calm even amid chaos. Something about that moment, his instinct, his courage, sent a shiver down her spine. When he returned, dripping wet, the entire cafe stared at him in awe. Emma stood up, grabbing napkins, trying to help him dry off. "You could have been hit," she scolded, voice trembling. He shrugged lightly. Couldn't just sit and watch. She looked into his eyes then, and saw it again. That quiet strength, that depth. But before she could ask more, her phone buzzed. A message from her best friend. "Hey, just realized something crazy. The Noah you're meeting isn't the one I set you up with. That guy canceled last minute." Emma's breath caught. She looked at him, stunned. "Wait, if you're not the guy I was supposed to meet, then who are you?" Noah smiled faintly, water dripping from his hair. "Just someone who needed a cup of coffee tonight." But as he turned to leave, she noticed something, a small gold emblem peeking out from inside his coat pocket. It looked expensive, corporate, and as he stepped out into the rain, her gut whispered that this man, this stranger, was far more than he seemed. The next morning, Emma woke with the sound of rain still lingering in her ears. The image of Noah standing in the storm, his soaked shirt clinging to him, the calm in his eyes as chaos erupted around him, played over and over in her mind. She hadn't been able to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that emblem, the glint of gold that didn't belong on a man who claimed to be just someone needing coffee. She sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through her phone, rereading her friend's message. The Noah you were supposed to meet canceled. Then who was he? And why had he sat down at her table, knowing she was waiting for someone else? By the time she left for work, her curiosity had replaced confusion. Emma worked as an assistant at a local publishing firm, a small company tucked between glass skyscrapers and crowded cafes. Her mornings were usually filled with mundane tasks, organizing manuscripts, scheduling meetings, managing the boss's impossible demands. But today, her thoughts were elsewhere. She replayed every detail of the night before, his words, his quiet smile, the way he had said, "Life's unpredictable." At lunchtime, she sat by the same cafe window, hoping, ridiculously, that he might appear again. But hours passed, and the seat across from her remained empty. That night, as she walked home, she took a shortcut through the park. The city's lights glowed faintly through the fog, and just as she turned a corner, she saw him, Noah, sitting alone on a bench, dressed in the same simple clothes, his gaze fixed on the lake that shimmered with reflections of passing cars. Her steps slowed. "So," she said softly, approaching, "do you often steal other people's blind dates?" He looked up, startled at first, then smiled. "Guess I owe you an apology. You think?" She teased, sitting beside him. "You could have just said you were someone else." He shrugged, glancing down at the ground. "You looked like you needed company, and I didn't feel like being alone either." Something in his tone silenced her sarcasm. There was heaviness beneath his calm, an ache he didn't show but couldn't hide. After a quiet moment, she asked, "So, what do you really do? You don't seem like the type to just drift around coffee shops pretending to be someone's date." He chuckled lightly. "Let's just say I'm between things right now." "Between what things?" "Work, life, purpose," he said vaguely, avoiding her eyes. Emma crossed her arms. "That's not an answer," he turned then, meeting her gaze. "Sometimes the truth doesn't fit neatly into answers." There it was again, that cryptic, careful way of speaking that made her feel like he was both hiding something and protecting her from it. She wanted to ask about the emblem she'd seen in his coat, but something stopped her. Instead, she sighed. "You're strange, you know that?" "I've been called worse," he said, smiling faintly. For the next hour they talked. About life, about choices, about how unfair the world could be sometimes. Noah's perspective fascinated her. He spoke about success like someone who'd lost it, and about humility like someone who'd earned it the hard way. But just when Emma felt comfortable enough to ask the questions she'd been holding back, a black car pulled up on the street beside them. The window rolled down, and a man in a suit looked out. "Sir," he said respectfully, "we've been looking for you." Emma froze. "Sir?" Noah's expression hardened. "I told you not to follow me, Mr. Carter. It's not safe. That's enough." Noah's voice carried quiet authority, one that didn't belong to a poor man between jobs. The man hesitated, then nodded and drove away. Emma stared at Noah, her pulse racing. "Mr. Carter?" she repeated. He rubbed the back of his neck, sighing. "That's complicated." "Try me," she said, her voice trembling between curiosity and disbelief. But Noah only looked at her, the corners of his lips curving into a half-smile. "One day I will, just—" "Not tonight." She wanted to argue, demand answers, but something about his tone silenced her again. The kind of silence that carried a story she wasn't ready to hear. When they parted ways that night, he left her with a sentence that stayed in her head long after he was gone. "Emma, sometimes people hide who they are, not to deceive others, but to remember who they were before everything changed." As she watched him disappear down the dimly lit street, she felt a strange mixture of warmth and unease. Who was Noah Carter? And what was he hiding from? Days passed, but Emma couldn't shake the encounter from her mind. Noah Carter, the quiet man with soft eyes and a hidden storm behind them, had become a mystery she couldn't stop trying to solve. The way that suited man had called him sir wasn't something you could easily forget. People didn't speak like that to waiters or drifters. They spoke like that to men who owned things. But Noah had vanished. No texts, no calls, not even a glimpse at the cafe. It was as though he had stepped out of her life as quietly as he had entered it. Until one morning, Emma arrived at work, juggling coffee and folders, only to find the entire office buzzing. Whispers swirled like wind through the hallway, nervous, excited, disbelieving. Her boss, a stern woman who rarely smiled, was pacing with an expression caught between awe and panic. "What's going on?" Emma asked her coworker, Ben. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "The company's been bought." "What?" "Yeah, a full acquisition. Some corporate giant came in overnight, Carter Industries." Emma froze, her heart stuttering. "Carter," Ben continued. "Apparently the new owner's coming today. Big deal. They say he's this reclusive millionaire. Super private, never shows up in public. People call him the ghost CEO." Emma's mouth went dry. No, it couldn't be. By noon, everyone was lined up in the lobby, waiting to meet the mysterious new boss. Emma stood near the back, her heart thudding so loudly she could barely hear the murmurs around her. The elevator doors opened, and there he was. Noah, but not the Noah she knew. This Noah wore a tailored charcoal suit that fit him like armor. His hair was slicked back, his expression composed and unreadable. Gone were the worn jeans, the soft smiles, the quiet humility. In his place stood a man who commanded the room with a single glance. The staff erupted into polite applause. Emma just stood there, staring, unable to move. He stepped forward, shaking hands, thanking people for their work. When his gaze finally found hers, something flickered in his eyes, recognition, regret, restraint. But he said nothing. He moved past her as though she were a stranger. It felt like a slap she didn't see coming. Later that afternoon, as the office buzzed about their handsome new CEO, Emma locked herself in the storage room, her emotions spinning. She felt foolish, used. He had sat across from her, pretending to be poor, letting her believe they were equals, while the truth was that he owned half the city. Why would he lie? Why play that role? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Emma?" Her breath caught. That voice. She turned as the door creaked open, and there he was, Noah, back in his sleek suit, every inch the man she thought she didn't know. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly. He sighed. "I had to see you. I didn't know this was your company when I acquired it." "Right," she snapped. "Just like you didn't know you were sitting at someone else's blind date?" Noah's jaw tightened. That was an accident, but everything after that wasn't. Emma folded her arms, blinking back tears. "You lied to me." "I didn't lie," he said softly. "I just didn't tell you everything." She laughed bitterly. "You let me think you were broke. You let me feel sorry for you." His voice rose slightly, emotion breaking through his usual calm. "I didn't want you to see this version of me. I wanted to be real with someone, Emma. Do you know how many people look at me and see only money, titles, power? You didn't. You talked to me like I was human." Her anger faltered, replaced by confusion. "Then why keep pretending?" "Because the moment I tell someone who I am, everything changes." His voice broke slightly. "I didn't want to lose that." She stared at him, hurt, conflicted, but unable to deny the sincerity in his tone. Yet part of her couldn't forgive the deception. "You had a choice," she whispered. "You could have trusted me." "I did," he said quietly. "That's why I'm standing here now." But Emma shook her head. "No, Noah. You trusted me when it was convenient. And now you're just proving why people like you hide behind secrets." She brushed past him, leaving him alone in the small room filled with silence. As she walked away, her chest ached, not just from betrayal, but from the knowledge that, despite everything, part of her still cared. Outside, through the glass walls of the office, Noah stood watching her leave. His expression wasn't that of a powerful man, It was of someone who had everything yet somehow lost the one thing that mattered. The days that followed were heavy, like walking through fog that refused to lift. Emma avoided Noah at every turn. She buried herself in work, hoping the exhaustion would dull the sting of betrayal. But no matter how many reports she typed or calls she made, her mind kept replaying his words. "You talked to me like I was human." The office had changed since he took over. The atmosphere was tense, yet somehow more disciplined. Rumors floated through every corner. How Noah Carter was restructuring departments, how he planned to modernize the company, how he'd single-handedly saved 2 failing branches in the last year. To the world, he was brilliant. To Emma, he was the man who'd lied to her, and yet, every time she saw him walk past, the calm authority in his stride, the rare moments when his gaze found hers across a meeting room, her chest tightened. He never tried to approach her again, though she often caught him lingering near her desk when he thought she wasn't looking. One rainy afternoon, a sudden call from her boss interrupted Emma's attempt to stay invisible. "Emma, Mr. Carter wants you in his office, now." Her pulse jumped. "Me? Yes, you," he asked specifically. When she walked into his office, the air felt different, quieter, heavier. The floor-to-ceiling windows framed the gray skyline, raindrops tracing paths down the glass. Noah sat behind a massive oak desk, no smile this time, just tired eyes. "Close the door," he said softly. She did, hesitantly. He gestured for her to sit. "I know you don't want to be here, but this isn't personal." "Then what is it?" He hesitated. "I'm assigning you to a new project. Personally." Her brows furrowed. "You want me to work directly under you?" "Yes," he said. "It's a charitable initiative, a literacy program for underprivileged kids. You mentioned once you used to volunteer at a community library." "I remember," she blinked. He remembered. Still, she crossed her arms. "I'm sure there are people better suited for that." He met her gaze. "There are. But I trust you." That word, trust, hit harder than she expected. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emma sighed, trying to sound unaffected. "Fine, I'll do it. But keep it professional." He nodded once. "Always." Over the next few weeks, they worked side by side. The project forced her to see him not as the CEO, but as a man who cared deeply about things no one saw. He visited schools himself, quietly donating books without taking photos, personally speaking to teachers about their struggles. He never mentioned his name in those conversations. Emma began to notice the humanity behind the wealth, the way he'd stop mid-sentence to listen when a child spoke, how he'd laugh softly when covered in paint after helping decorate a classroom. Each time, it chipped away at the wall she'd built around her heart. One evening, after a long day at a rural school, their car broke down on the outskirts of the city. The driver went to get help, leaving them waiting near an abandoned roadside diner. The sun was setting, streaking the sky with orange and violet. Emma leaned against the car, arms crossed. "You really don't act like a millionaire," she said quietly. He chuckled. "That's because I remember what it was like not to be one." She turned to him, curious despite herself. "You weren't always rich?" Noah shook his head. "No, I grew up in a one-bedroom apartment. My father worked in a factory. When he got hurt, I dropped out of college to take care of him. That's when I started my first company, from our kitchen table." Emma's expression softened. "You built everything from nothing?" He nodded slowly. "And somewhere along the way, I forgot who I was doing it for. Money became a shield. I started losing people I loved, friends, family. Everyone thought I was too far gone to care." His eyes met hers, raw and unguarded. "That night in the cafe, you reminded me what it felt like to just be a man again." Silence stretched between them. The sound of distant thunder filled the space where words refused to form. Emma wanted to hate him, but she couldn't. Not after seeing this side of him. Still, she whispered, "You hurt me, Noah. You made me feel small." He took a step closer, his voice trembling slightly. "I know, and I'll spend as long as it takes proving you're not." Something inside her cracked, just a little. But before she could say anything, headlights appeared down the road. The driver was back. They both stepped away, the fragile moment dissolving like mist. As the car rolled toward the city, Emma looked out the window, her heart warring with itself. She wanted to believe him, but she'd learned long ago that trust wasn't rebuilt by words. Still, When she glanced at him in the reflection of the glass, she saw not the CEO, not the disguise, but the man who'd run into the rain that night without hesitation. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth holding on to. The following week began like any other, long hours, back-to-back meetings, and the low hum of office chatter. But beneath the surface, something felt off. Emma couldn't quite name it, yet the tension in the building was palpable. Noah had grown quieter, more guarded. He spent hours locked in his office, phone pressed to his ear, his jaw tight. The warmth she'd begun to see in him was retreating behind that familiar wall of power and silence. She told herself not to care. But she did. Every look he avoided, every strained smile, it all gnawed at her. One afternoon, as she left a meeting, she overheard two executives whispering near the elevator. "Carter's under investigation," one said. "What? For what?" "Something about embezzlement, internal fraud, offshore accounts. No one knows." "The board's panicking." Emma froze. "Embezzlement? Fraud?" The words rang in her head like sirens. That evening, when the last of the staff had gone home, Emma stayed behind, pacing her small cubicle. Her instincts screamed that there was more to the story. Noah might be many things: secretive, frustrating, stubborn, but dishonest. She had seen the way he treated people who had nothing. That man didn't fit the mold of a criminal. Still, she needed answers. The hallway to his office was dark except for the glow of light seeping from under the door. She hesitated, then knocked gently. "Come in," came his voice, low, weary. When she entered, Noah was standing by the window, city lights reflecting in his eyes. His suit jacket hung on a chair. His sleeves were rolled up, his tie loosened. Papers covered his desk, some stamped with legal seals, others with red marks that looked like warnings. "You're still here," he said without turning. "So are you." He exhaled heavily, running a hand through his hair. "You heard, didn't you?" Emma nodded. "Is it true?" He turned, meeting her eyes. "No, but in this world, truth doesn't matter as much as timing." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He walked toward his desk, picking up a document. "Someone inside my company has been leaking information. False numbers, fabricated statements. They're trying to make it look like I've been siphoning funds. It's an inside hit." Her breath caught. "Who would do that?" He hesitated. "Someone who wants me out. My board's been divided for months. Some think I've gone soft, wasting resources on charity and community projects. They want profit, not purpose." Emma's chest tightened. "So they're framing you?" He nodded grimly. "And they're doing a damn good job of it." She stepped closer, searching his face for the man she'd come to understand. There it was, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the weight of carrying a world that didn't believe in his heart. "Can't you fight it?" she asked. "I am," he said quietly. "But when your enemies wear suits and smiles, the battlefield isn't fought with truth, it's fought with perception." For a moment, the air between them was heavy with unsaid things. Emma could feel his pain, his frustration, his fear of losing everything he'd built. Not the money, but the meaning behind it. "Let me help," she said suddenly. Noah looked startled. "Emma, this isn't your fight." "Maybe not. But you once told me I reminded you of who you were before everything changed. Maybe it's time someone reminded you that you're not alone." His expression softened just for a heartbeat. "You shouldn't get involved. It could cost you your job." "Then so be it," she said, voice steady. "You trusted me once. Trust me again." He looked at her for a long moment, then finally nodded. "All right, if you really want to help, there's something you can do." He handed her a flash drive. "These are the original accounting records. If we can prove they were tampered with, I can expose whoever's behind this. But I can't be the one to deliver them. It'll look like I'm covering my own tracks." Emma took the drive, her hand brushing his. "Who do I give it to?" "There's a journalist I trust, Amelia West. She owes me a favor. She'll know what to do." "Got it," she said, slipping it into her bag. But as she turned to leave, Noah caught her arm gently. "Emma," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever happens next, I need you to know I meant everything I said. About that night. About you." Her heart fluttered painfully, but she nodded, unable to speak. The next morning, she took the drive to Amelia's office downtown. The journalist, a sharp-eyed woman with a calm demeanor, assured her she'd handle it discreetly. By evening, the story broke, not about Noah's supposed crimes, but about the internal conspiracy against him. Evidence from the flash drive exposed board members manipulating numbers to seize control. Noah was cleared within hours, but what Emma didn't know was that in the process, her name had appeared in the leaked documents. Someone had traced the transfer to her computer, and now she was being accused of corporate espionage. The next morning, Emma woke to chaos. Her phone was buzzing non-stop, messages, calls, notifications all blurring together. Words like thief, traitor, and leak filled her screen. Her name was trending on social media, tied to words that didn't belong to her. Overnight, she had become the scapegoat for a crime she didn't commit. She sat on the edge of her bed, her trembling hands gripping the phone. Every article, every headline carried the same narrative. CEO's assistant under investigation for corporate theft. Her face, once anonymous, was now plastered across every business blog and gossip site. They painted her as the poor girl who got too close to power, as if she'd seduced her way into chaos. It wasn't just humiliation, it was destruction. Her landlord called, politely asking her to resolve her legal situation before the end of the week. Her inbox filled with hate mail, people accusing her of betrayal. The world she'd built, her career, her reputation, her small sense of dignity, crumbled in a single day. By noon, Emma's apartment felt suffocating. She stuffed her phone in a drawer and left, walking aimlessly through the rain-soaked streets. People glanced at her as if they recognized her. Some whispered. Some pointed. She kept her head down, fighting tears that refused to stop. All she could think about was him, Noah Carter, the man who had brought light into her life and unknowingly dragged her into his shadows. Meanwhile, high above the city, Noah was standing in a boardroom filled with suits and silence. His jaw was tight, his voice like steel. "You leaked her name," he said, staring down the line of board members who'd turned against him. She had nothing to do with this. The chairman, a gray-haired man with cold eyes, smirked faintly. "You underestimate how perception works, Mr. Carter. You chose her. You made her part of this." Noah slammed his fist against the table, startling everyone. "You'll fix this." Every last headline, every post, every lie, or I'll dismantle this entire company piece by piece. The chairman's smirk faded. "You'd destroy your empire for a woman?" Noah's voice dropped to a growl. "For her? In a heartbeat." He walked out before anyone could respond, his chest burning with rage and guilt. Emma had been the only one who believed him when everyone else turned their backs. And now she was paying the price for his war. Hours later, he found her. She was sitting on a park bench, the same one where they'd first talked after that mistaken blind date. Her clothes were damp, her eyes swollen from crying. The soft glow of a streetlight fell across her face, making her look heartbreakingly fragile. He approached quietly. "Emma." She didn't look up. "Please, just go." "I can't," he said, kneeling beside her. "I didn't know they'd use you like that." "I swear." Her voice was hoarse. "You swore a lot of things, Noah." He flinched. "You don't deserve this. I'm fixing it. Can you fix this?" She asked bitterly, gesturing to the world around her. The whispers, the headlines, the invisible scars. "Can you erase how they look at me now? Like I'm nothing but a liar?" He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. For the first time, Noah Carter, who had built empires, tamed markets, and crushed competitors, felt utterly powerless. He reached out slowly, but she pulled away. "I lost my job, my name, everything I worked for," she said through tears. "All because I tried to help you." His voice cracked. "Then let me make it right." "How?" she demanded. "With money? A new job? A press release? You don't understand, Noah. Some things you can't buy back. Silence. The kind that hurts more than shouting ever could." Finally, she stood. "I wish I'd never met you that night." He looked up at her, rain streaking down his face. "You don't mean that." "I do," she whispered, but her voice trembled. As she walked away, something inside him shattered. He stood there for a long time, watching her fade into the night, until even her shadow disappeared. The next day, Noah called a press conference. Cameras flashed, reporters swarmed, questions flew like arrows. He stood at the podium, expression hard but eyes hollow. "This situation began because of me," he said firmly. "Emma Clark is innocent. The investigation was based on false evidence planted to discredit both of us. I take full responsibility." Gasps filled the room. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Reporters scrambled for questions, but Noah didn't take any. He just stepped down and walked away, leaving the world to interpret his silence however it wished. Hours later, Emma saw the broadcast. Her name was cleared publicly, but it didn't feel like victory. The damage was done. The world had already made its judgment. Still, a single sentence in his statement echoed in her head. 3 weeks passed. The world had moved on. New scandals, new headlines, new distractions. But for Noah Carter, time hadn't moved at all. Every morning felt like the same punishment. Empty halls, empty boardrooms, and an emptier heart. His empire still stood, but it no longer felt like his. Investors had pulled back, his reputation was fractured, and the board was circling like vultures waiting for his fall. Yet he didn't care. The only thing he wanted to rebuild was her trust. Emma, meanwhile, had found quiet refuge in a small coastal town far from the city. She rented a modest room above a bookstore, spending her days sorting shelves and her nights watching the ocean. The waves didn't judge her. They didn't ask questions. They just came and went, like forgiveness, slow but constant. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the horizon, she heard a familiar voice behind her. Still chasing sunsets? Emma froze. She turned, and there he was, Noah. Not in his usual tailored suit, but in a simple black sweater and jeans. No entourage, no arrogance. Just him. She blinked. "How did you find me?" He smiled faintly. "I asked the only person who could, your landlord. I might have bribed him with a new roof." She almost smiled, but caught herself. "What do you want, Noah?" "Just 5 minutes," he said softly. "Then I'll leave if you still want me to." She sighed and nodded. 5 minutes. He stepped closer, hesitant, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he moved too fast. "I ruined your life," he said quietly. "And I can't undo that. But I can spend the rest of mine trying to make it right." "Noah, let me finish," he interrupted gently. "I thought power could protect the people I care about. But it only built walls between us. I was too proud to see it. Until losing you showed me what real strength means." Her eyes softened despite herself. "You're still good with words," he chuckled sadly. "They're all I've got left." There was a silence, the kind that holds both pain and hope. The wind picked up, carrying the sound of waves crashing below. "I cleared your record," he continued. "You'll get official notice tomorrow. The case is closed, the charges dropped, and the real thief, my own executive, was arrested yesterday." Emma's breath caught. "You did that?" He nodded. "Took me weeks to dig through the lies. But I couldn't rest until your name was clean again." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "Why go that far?" "Because you believed in me when I didn't deserve it," he said. "Because you're the only person who ever saw Noah. Not the CEO, not the headlines, not the man with the money, just me." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he pulled something from his coat pocket, a small envelope. "What's that?" she asked cautiously. He handed it to her. "A letter of recommendation for a nonprofit I started last week. It's called the Clark Foundation. It helps women rebuild careers after being wrongly accused or silenced." Emma stared at him, stunned. "You named it after me?" He smiled gently. "I named it for the person who reminded me that compassion is the greatest form of leadership." She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "Noah, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll at least think about joining," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Not for me, for the people who need someone like you." Her tears finally fell, glistening in the sunset light. "You really changed." He gave a small, bittersweet smile. "No, you just showed me who I could be." They stood there, facing the horizon. Two people who had lost everything but found something far greater. Truth. As the last rays of sunlight faded, Emma spoke softly. "You said you'd earn me back one day," he nodded. "And I still mean it." "Then start by walking with me," she said, her voice trembling but sincere. "One step at a time," he exhaled, a sound that carried both relief and gratitude. Then he reached out, and this time, when their hands met, she didn't pull away. The ocean roared below. The sky deepened to a violet hush, and for the first time in months, both of them felt something they thought they'd lost forever. Peace, hope, and maybe, just maybe, love reborn not from wealth or pretense, but from pain, truth, and second chances. Final scene, epilogue. Months later, a newspaper headline quietly circulates online. Former CEO Noah Carter launches the Clark Foundation, a mission of redemption forged in love, and beneath it, a photo. Emma standing beside him, smiling, her eyes bright with purpose. The caption reads, "Some stories don't end with revenge or ruin. They end with rebuilding."